Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here again to talk to you. I'm really sorry with the circumstances that I'm not over there in Prague with you. I always enjoy coming to Prague. It's very nice people and even nicer beer, which is really a plus. So today we're going to talk about ITIL 4 and the High Velocity IT book. There's quite a lot of slides in this. I'll go through them. Some of it's for you can reprise at your own leisure later on. What we're going to be talking today is a brief overview of the ITIL 4 key concepts. My understanding is you guys probably know about the ITIL 4 key concepts, but I'm going to just briefly run through them to start with, so we've got a grounding where we are. What is HVIT? What we are and what we are not going to talk about today. What constitutes a high velocity organization? How do we stop agile silos? What is agile ITSM? And value streams and minimum viable practices. So these are the topics we're going to talk about today. This is me. You've seen the bio on the side, so I won't go into that. So what is ITIL 4? Key concepts. As I said, I'm going to go through these quite quickly because there's quite a lot to talk about. The 4 dimensions of service management: organizations and people, information and technology, partners and suppliers, value streams and processes. These are all affected by the pestle around the outside, factors that affect what's going on in the center. So environmental, political, economic, social, technology, and legal. So these all sit around the outside of that. Inside that is products and services and value creation. Inside that is that bit of in the middle is the service value system, the SVS. It takes opportunity demand from the beginning. Everything has to start with an opportunity or a demand, and it turns it into value at the other end. Talk about that a bit later, but if something isn't producing value, you shouldn't be doing it. So it has to have an opportunity, demand has produced value. It goes through the SVS, which has guiding principles, governance, practices, and continual improvement. I always say this: please don't worry about which is on top and which is on bottom. They're just around the service value chain. They're not in any specific order or importance. In the center sits a service value chain, which is the actual kind of engine that does the work. The next one we have is the guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles. As I say, I'm not going to go through them all, but these are things that should kind of influence everything you do within the ITSM world. Indeed, I would argue that these guiding principles work pretty well in life in general and pretty much anything you do. So, you know, there's something to kind of look at. Again, I'm not going to go on through them all. Service value chain sits at the center. In there, you have that demand and value that comes out either side. In the middle are a set of actions. These are actions. They're not actual areas. They're not teams. They're not anything else. They're actions. So there's the action of engaging with somebody or something, obtain and build, design and transition, deliver and support, and plan and improve. All these should lead to products and services which create the value at the end, or enable co-creation of value. So this is the service value chain where everything actually goes through. The advantage of this is that it's scalable. It's scalable to an individual, to a team, or to the whole enterprise. Whether you're working in an individual team, or you're working in a large team, or if you're working for a multinational corporation, this should all relate. Something comes in as a demand, something has to go out as value, and it's how you work within it in the middle that produces that. Value streams are journeys through the value chain, and you can map those to see where something occurs. So you want a new service component, for example. This is just a pure kind of one for a diagram here. The demand comes in, someone engages with that demand. What is it you need? What's going on? What's happening? You plan it, you do a design and transition, you obtain or build it, It might go back to design and transition again. You then deliver and support. It comes out the other end as value, and it may well go back in as via the feedback loop at the bottom into new demand. So a new service component might create a demand for yet another stream that goes through the value chain. You can map these through each one, and it tells you where your hotspots are across your whole enterprise, because it tells you where, you know, that engages a very heavy activity that you need, and you need to make sure your resources, etc. So that's a very brief overview. I know it's a very brief overview, but as I said, we've got a lot to talk about on HVIT, so I didn't want to kind of spend too long doing that. So now we move across to the topic of conversation for today, which is what is HVIT. So we start off with a definition. This is straight out of the book. Definition: high velocity IT is the application of digital technology for significant business enablement, where time to market, time to customer, time to change, and speed in general are crucial. High velocity is not restricted to fast development. It is required throughout the service value chain, from innovation at the start through development and operations to the actual realization of value. Very important thing to note on this: velocity, the word velocity, the definition of velocity is speed of something in a given direction. So the whole idea of high velocity is that you just don't go off at high speed into nowhere. You're supposed to have a direction that you're going in. Sometimes in really kind of chaotic things that you're trying to do that you don't actually know where you've got to go, you want to experiment and try and work things along. You might go in small bursts in one direction and then check and evaluate and get feedback and decide if that's the correct way, and if not, move to another direction. But just be wary, the whole idea of high velocity is not just about going fast. It's about going fast with an actual reason for doing it and an actual direction that you want to go to, even if it's in small dashes and you're going slightly in the wrong direction to start with. It's all part of kind of, you know, you have to have that understanding. The characteristics of high velocity IT, this again is straight out of the book, and they're lean, agile, resilient, and continuous. So lean is reduction of waste, improved throughput. Agile is iterative collaboration with users. It's that close interaction with teams, etc. It's the small iterative changes. It's the feedback. It's all this kind of thing. This is what Agile is all about. Resilient is if you're going to do things quickly, if you're going to kind of move in a direction and you want to do fail fast, recover quick, you have to make sure that your services and systems that you're doing are resilient. Doesn't mean to say they won't go wrong, but if they go wrong, they recover themselves. So automation is a very important in this, the minimizing the effect of incidents on degrading systems, etc. How it actually kind of, how you make sure that this is robust and it actually survives. And continuous, and that's fast and reliable deployment. It's important thing to note here that high velocity IT is not just about continuous and fast, reliable deployment. It's not only a deployment. We'll talk about that more as we go through, but it's along the whole thing. It's about how you design your systems, and we'll talk about that later. But it's a lot of times it's seen as just this development stage and reliable deployment. It's not only about that, but we'll talk about that as we come along. So these are the four characteristics of a high velocity IT. It's also point to note here that if you're going to have truly high velocity IT and you're going to have digitalization and digital organizations, culture is often one of the key factors that you need to look at. A lot of people try to go down the very high velocity route. They try to do it very quickly. And without taking culture there first, it will fail. So culture is a really important thing if you truly want to get to it. You can do Like with all things in high velocity, you can do small iterative changes and feedback on them and move towards it. But if you actually want to get to full scale digitalization in a digital environment and a digital organization, you need a culture change in what you're doing. So it's not just about these small changes, and it's not just about reliable deployment. It's also a lot to do about quality as well. You have to maintain the quality by doing this. It's no good going very fast and ineffective and shoddy and not working properly. It has to have the quality built in as well. So it's how you build all these things in. These, I'm not going to go through them all, but these are the following practices that are highlighted with HVIT. These are the kind of things that you need to look at if you're going to truly have a high velocity IT environment. Some of the others affected as well, but these are the kind of main key ones that you need to kind of look at. As I said, I'm not going to go through them all. Just to say that the high velocity IT book is something like 170 pages and goes into several chapters. We just haven't got time in a 40-minute talk this morning to go through this, so I've picked out some bits, but these are some of the practices. So from saying that, what are we going to talk about and what are we not going to talk about today? We're not going to talk about so many things we could talk about in HVIT. As I said, big book. Well, it's not a big book. But it's 170 odd pages. There's a lot of information in there. These are the things that we're not going to discuss today, or I'm not going to talk to you about today. What actually constitutes a digital organization? Digital transformation itself, how you transform the organization. There are pieces on both of these, well, all of these things we're talking about within the book, but as I said, in today's talk, we're not going to speak about those. Key behavioral patterns, I'll try saying that again, key behavioral patterns. This again goes back to this culture. You have to have key patterns of behavior to kind of become a true HVIT organization. Two of the big things as well that we talk about now is customer experience and customer journeys, how you take your customers on a journey and the experiences they get while they're dealing with your services, the touch points, the interactions, how you manage those, how you ensure that things are working and how you move them along. But again, not for today. And detailed techniques for HVIT. The book does give you techniques and ways of doing things. We're not going to go through each one of those today. We just haven't got the time. So these are the ones we're not going to talk about. So what are we going to talk about today? We've got these 4 subjects. What constitutes a high velocity organization? The 5 key themes. How do we stop the agile silos? And we talk about the holistic approach, and I'll explain what I mean by agile silos as we go through. What is agile ITSM? So the questions are, and there seems to be a confusion here. Is it ITSM for agile teams? And this often moves down to what I'm talking about a moment ago about the kind of DevOps community, the agile development, the continuous production of things. Is it that? Is it ITSM for agile teams? Or is it an agile form of ITSM? Questions we'll talk about. And value streams and minimum viable practices. We've heard of minimum viable products. We're going to be talking about minimal viable practices. And this is a talk about flow and what a minimal viable practice is. So these are the main things we're going to talk about today. If you have any questions or anything, by the way, send them through on the chat, and we'll see if we've got time at the end to go through some of them. So first one, what constitutes a high velocity organization? These are the things that we consider makes a high velocity organization. It makes the right digital investments. It understands what's going on. It understands the needs and requirements, and it makes digital investments that drives it forward. You look to do everything on the digital kind of path. try to organize things, try to optimize and automate, as one of the guiding principles says. What have you got? Can you optimize it? Can you automate it? Is there tools? Is there correct things you can use of a digital nature that will help you to do this, will automate it, take away a lot of the manual kind of more labor intensive tasks. Realize and deliver digital products and services quickly. Again, in this world we're living in, people want digital products and they want digital services and they want them now. And there's always going to be somebody out there that will deliver them if you don't. So it's realize what they are and deliver them as quickly as you can, and deliver them with quality and speed and with the customer, thinking of customer journeys, etc., etc. Provide digital products and services that are highly resilient to disruption. Again, it's no good doing quick, agile production of services, etc., if they're not resilient and they don't recover quickly and they don't kind of do what is required. So that's you've got to have that resiliency to disruption. It's got to be able to resist disruption. Ensure that the service consumer realizes value from their digital products and services. Back to one of the basic key concepts of ITIL 4 is that value is co-created, and value has to be the end of everything. Opportunity demand leads to value. Again, one of the guiding principles, they all tie up with this. All of these things tie in. One of the guiding principles, focus on value. If you're not doing something that produces value to somebody, pardon me, if you're not doing something that produces value to somebody, key stakeholder, regulator, one of the PESTLE models, environmental, whatever it is, if you're not producing value, why are you doing it? So this one says that, ensure that the service consumer realizes that value. And until the consumer realizes it, because of the concept of co-created value, no value has been created. Value is a co-created thing. The example of that is this conference we're doing now. So this is a digital conference. It's not physically us there. They're doing this. The guys have set up a service for you to look at today, and I'm part of it doing this little talk. But if you don't realize value from it, if none of you bother to come, if I'm talking to nobody now, if there's nobody sitting at home on their computers or whatever watching this, then no value has been created. And why are we doing it? So it's all about that. It's only a co-creation of value. This is produced today. We produce it. We offer the opportunity to create value. You guys come in, produce value for it, and then we both get something out of the end of it. And last, assure conformance of activities with governance, risk and compliance requirements. Again, it's a key thing about stakeholders, and it's also a key thing about value. Value is not just monetary. It is a whole range of things. It can be legal, compliance, governance, risk. All of these kind of things are requirements that produce value. The value could be that you don't get locked up or have a heavy fine for failing to meet regulation, but there's a value there. So don't just think of it as the monetary value. It's about the whole thing. So we'll move on to the next one. Agile silos, right? So, I mean, this is a kind of something that kind of goes against the grain, because the whole idea that you think of is of Agile, and you talk of DevOps teams and you talk about things like this, is this co-creation, this kind of communication, this team of people working together that breaks down silos. But by their very nature, if you're not careful, you can get DevOps teams that become siloed. They're focused on their world. What are they producing? What is their outcome? What is that they're doing, right? The requirements of their users. They have a group of people that they're working for, their customers. What do I need to do for this? They're focused in on it. The workflow. This is how do I improve my workflow? How do I make things go through quicker? How do I kind of recover these things if they go wrong? The delivery of value to their customers and users. How do I create value to that? While they're doing this, and I'm not saying this happens all the time, by the way, this is not a kind of generalization, but it is happening, is that it's kind of like, this is what I'm focused on, but someone else is dealing with the compliance issue. Someone else is dealing with external suppliers or stakeholders or finance. That's someone else's job. My job is to kind of just deliver this function that I'm doing within the team. And that is by definition a siloed approach. You have to look at all the other things. You have to look at the compliance and external suppliers, stakeholders, finance, and that can go right back to just what tools you're using to do it. There's a whole range of things. But the idea is that you have to ensure that when you have these agile teams that are working together like this, that they don't lose sight of the bigger picture. They don't lose sight of the holistic view of what's going on. It's very much kind of, you have to draw them back in. You have to actually turn around to them and say, look, you know, you have to do this. And ITIL 4 kind of focuses on that. It's very much a lattice work, a framework that things hang off of. So a lot of your other things like, pardon me, COBIT and Agile and IT for IT and all these kind of things hang off at the edge of this, and ITIL brings them all together. So it's very important that we try to stop these potential agile silos. I saw a DevOps talk the other day, and they were very much focusing on this because they were seeing more and more silos within teams, just because of the focus on what they were doing. So how does ITIL 4 deal with this? A more holistic approach, understanding stakeholders from all 4 domains. So you need to understand what they are with the PESTLE model that goes around the outside. So looking at the environmental and all the other factors. Integrate other frameworks like COBIT, ISO, IT for IT, etc., etc., etc. There's a list you could go down there. We talk about governance and the importance of governance, and we have some guidance on governance, but it's small. It's a tiny piece because governance in itself is a large piece of work on how it's done. But it gives you the idea of where it fits in, what you should be looking at, and then if you want more, you can go to COBIT, for example, and it will tell you more what you want to do. If you want, an organisation is very keen on having standards within the organisation. For some government contracts, etc., want you to be ISO certified, then ITIL will help you to do that. ISO is very much about what you want to do, or what you must do and should do, and ITIL was how you do it, and so on. I could go through each one, but it's all about that. It puts bits into consider GRC, consider GDPR, legislation, laws, environmental issues, etc., etc., etc. So it brings all that in, and it brings it into the actual idea of the workflow that you're doing within the individual teams, because it goes back to the value stream. So within the value stream, which I'll come to in a minute, but within the value stream, you should be thinking of those particular issues as you move along. So go to the next one. So what is an Agile ITSM? So is it ITSM for Agile teams? So a Agile team is focused on the team, and it's reduction of interventions to flow. If you're an Agile team, it's about flow. It's that move from demands, opportunity to value, and it's how that work flows through. How do you avoid bottlenecks? How do you avoid blockages? How do you recover from things if it goes wrong? How do you keep that flow going? So you've got that continuous development, maintaining quality, maintaining things that you need, but with a continuous flow. So flow is very important in the Agile world. So ITSM for Agile, for Agile teams, is about that. It's very much about how you recover from things, how you sort things out, how you, a lot of the kind of traditional things, but done in a more kind of Agile way, more iteratively with feedback, going back to another guiding principle, how you actually enable that flow to be to be fluid, to move through nicely and not to kind of create bottlenecks. It talks a lot about how you can prioritize work, how you can do workflow, things like Kanban boards, things like this. There's a lot of kind of techniques, which, as I said at the beginning, we won't go into here now because we haven't got the time. But it's all about that kind of how making things smooth, making reduction of interventions to flow, enabling things to be done quicker, efficiently, and with quality. Is it an agile form of ITSM? So that's a different thing, right? And that is kind of based on the guiding principles. So that is this whole thing about when you're doing your whole ITSM approach, right? So whether you're doing an incident practice or a problem practice or a infrastructure practice, whatever you're doing, then you're looking on focus on value. What are you doing within that practice to create value for people? Progress iteratively with feedback. How are you doing things as in a whole, in the whole kind of patterns of the way you work? So it's about doing the things we used to do in ITIL 3 kind of thing, in the processes and things like that, but doing them in a more agile form. How do you make changes to them? Continuous improvement. How do you keep things moving along there? So it's not so much about the actual team and the flow of work within a team. It's about the whole way interaction is performed with by ITSM. So the whole IT service management function, the whole area around it, how that is adapted and adjusted and progressed in an agile way. And again, you could see that again the guiding principles. I've spoken to some of them on the agile team. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, you know, start where you are, don't reinvent the wheel. Look to where you want to move. Then progress iteratively with feedback. One of the questions I often get asked is, how do I move across from ITIL 3 to ITIL 4? The way you move from ITIL 3 and ITIL 4 is you start where you are and you progress iteratively with feedback, focusing on value, working holistically. I mean, it's the guiding principles. You look where you are, you will be doing good things. There's things in there that you still want to do. You'll see where you want to go, and then it's a case of how can I do continuous small improvements, getting feedback as I go along until I get to the new state. The same with high velocity IT. You want to go more down a high velocity IT route, you can't throw everything out and start again. Start where you are. Where do you want to be? Progress iteratively with feedback, move your practices, move your understanding along until you get to where you want to be. Use value streams. So you can use value streams to map where you're going. So you get that value stream and you can see where bottlenecks will appear within value streams. So if you're obtain and build, if most of your kind of demand filters through obtain and build, then you need to understand, have you got the capabilities within the teams, within your, you know, the environment to do that amount of obtain and build. It's a kind of crude example, but it's an example. Those value streams, if you map the value stream, so you look to see what a standard incident goes through, what a design of a website does, put all these in and map them through, you know, which areas they attend. You can focus on what areas might need development, what areas might need training on, what do people need staffing, and you can optimize it in that. And you can make it more agile on how it works. So use value streams, but you'll see more of that later. Or is it both? And I mean, I think that's a rhetorical question, really. I mean, to me, it's obvious that it's both. But I just think sometimes people focus on the top one. They focus on this DevOps thing. It's not all about DevOps. It works across the whole environment. And it's not just about continuous development. It's also about the whole function around service management and the whole way the company thinks. HVIT at the end of the day, as I said, is a cultural thing. It's about how the organization works, and it's about IT service management assisting that culture and assisting the way the company wants to work to get it. All right, move to the next one. Sorry, what are we doing? Right, value streams and minimum viable practices is the next one we've got. So value streams map the workflow from demand to value. We've said that they go through what the actual areas that they have to go through to do it. And practices are resource capabilities that are used within the stream. It's important to understand that the practices sit within the stream. They also sit within the teams. We're trying to move away from this idea that you have an incident management team and they're the incident management team. You have a change enablement team and they're the change enablement team. Change enablement is something that needs to be done. If you're doing an agile approach like a DevOps thing, you will need change enablement. That doesn't mean that you have to stop the workflow, go external, go to the change enablement team and say, can you improve my change? What it means is that using the change enablement practice, you need to put something within your workflow, within your stream, that is a check or a process or a something that enables you to do change enablement. So that shouldn't disrupt your flow. It should just be, when I get to this point, I have to do this. And if this passes this criteria, then I can enable the change. It's not, people often see this whole thing as kind of as a stop start. You stop, go and get change enablement, you come back and do it. This is fallen down because of the idea of the cab. A cab is very important, but a cab is for big major changes that, you know, will affect the whole company and kind of, you know, it's a lot to do more with waterfall than continuous development, but it's still, it's an argument that I would put forward. I don't know really if it's expunged in ITIL 4 as such, but I mean, if you're setting up these value streams and if you're setting up these kind of what you can enable and what you can't, for example, in change enablement, it might be worth at the very start of all this, while you're setting everything up, to have some form of cab and say, at this point, we need to enable it. What kind of things would everybody be happy with you doing? You can then use that to set up the criteria that you need. And then from then on, it just works as business as usual as it goes. So it's part of the flow. Agile ITSM ensures the work is integrated in the flow from demand to value. So all the work is in there, not outside. And as I said, example, change enablement, step for approval, integration of third-party change management, record tool, RACI matrix, all these kind of things can be put into the workflow. So you can say, here's your workflow. This is a step within the workflow, and it can be the guy on the shop floor that does it, the guy in the agile team that does it. But there has to be something at that point that says you now need to get approval, even if it's just like you have to confirm you've done this, 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 and this, and then you can do it, right? So this is where the kind of idea of value streams comes in, how they can help you do things. Minimal viable practice is you use this value stream mapping to understand the minimum that your practice needs to do to actually fulfill that value stream. If you then map all your value streams, you will understand what the minimum viable, so you'll understand what the minimum viable change enablement practice is. It might be quite restricted in some organizations. In other organizations, it might be huge. It might go off into large areas. But if you understand your value streams, you can say, right, well, we don't need to do these 4 things because they're not in our value stream. Nobody uses them. They're not a function that we provide. So our practice can be thinned down to do this, making it more efficient, more quicker, more agile. You can trim the unwanted steps or processes. It can help you with things like tool selection, because if you're looking to buy a tool, you will go out and they will say, here's our tool. It's really wonderful. It does all of this. It does these 150 different things. And it's brilliant. It does all these things. If you've done this properly, you might say, well, actually, I only need half of those because I'm not doing these kind of things. So maybe I don't need to buy this very large all-encompassing tool. I could buy something a bit more, a bit less kind of heavy. less extra cost or whatever, and develop it. But it helps you with unwanted overheads. It stops these breaks. So map out where you're going, the way it's working through the flow, and then look to see what you have to have the practices in there to do it. These practices are actually capabilities. So the capabilities of doing change enablement, for example, something that has to be done, and there has to be a structure behind it, a process, a tool, all of these kind of things. So the idea is that if you map it out, you can see just exactly what's needed and do a minimal viable practice, which can kind of save you time. Mapping value streams is quite a complicated thing, but it's well worth it. It produces a lot of benefits at the end of the day. And so I'm just going to kind of go through a little wrapping up process. And then I think I've probably left about 10 minutes or so for questions or whatever at the end, 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll just do the wrapping up bit. These are the concepts and models we spoke about earlier on. We've got the SVS, we've got the value stream, the value chain where streams go through. And we've got the 4 dimensions of service management at the bottom that are things you have to kind of look for. This is the ITIL 4 new certification structure. So what you've got there is you've got ITIL Foundation. This is all 4. ITIL Foundation along the bottom. Then there are, in the managing professional stream, there are 4 books with 4 examinations, which is create, deliver and support, drive stakeholder value, high velocity IT we've been talking about, and direct plan and improve. If you do those 4, you get the designation of managing professional. There's no further exam. You take those 4 and you get a managing professional. The ITIL digital IT strategy book is in the last stages of being developed, and it should be out soon. I'm not quite sure exactly when, but it will be out soon. If you have that and the direct plan improve, so direct plan improve is on both sides because it's considered that there's stuff in there that the strategic leader needs to understand. If you do those 2, you would get the designation of strategic leader. If you get both of those, I'm not sure, I should really know this, but I'm not sure if there's going to be some other thing you have to get, but that will lead you into the ITIL Master. So the ITIL Master is the ultimate at the top. There was talk originally that there'd be some kind of final thing you have to do to get it, but I'm not 100% sure at the moment, and I apologise for that because I should know, but I don't. The other way to do it, there's a managing professional transition, and the managing professional transition is basically it's a week-long course followed by an exam at the end of it, and it's for people that have got 17 points or more in ITIL 3. So that means they're up to the stage that they're ready to take the MALC, managing across the life cycle, in order to get the expert. The reason why it's stopped one short of that is because there is no life cycle approach in this as such, although you will see aspects of it still sitting within the SVS, etc. And so it's considered that the managing professional transition will teach you all the new concepts and will put all the new things that are in there. Because a lot of the things, practices and things like that, you'll understand the process drive of it. It's just linking it up with the other bits and tying it in. So it's you can take that, as I say, a week course with an exam at the end, and you can get your managing professional title. I'm not sure how long that's going to be on for, but I guess that'll probably be about another year, and then that'll probably get phased out. It won't go on forever. So if you're interested, then have a look at it. But they're the certificate structure. There's the ITIL books. I should by rights have put the ITIL high-vis one in there. I apologise, I didn't. It is on the front cover of this slide deck, and I think I will say that that is my lot, and I'm not sure how I've done. Alice will tell me now whether I've kind of kept to time.